Good morning. I would like to bring this meeting of the Planning and Advisory Commission to order for October the 4th. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would like to remind those in the audience and those watching on television that this is the first reading of any rezoning request brought before us today. We will hear a reading of the staff report and ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against that request. The Commission will have any needed discussion and render a decision, and then that decision will be sent back to the Planning and Advisory Commission, or Planning and Advisory, and then on to City Council, who will hear the request 2 more times before rendering a final decision. We did have minutes that were sent out to everybody from the September 6th meeting, and we can approve those as submitted unless there are any changes or additions that we need to make to those minutes. Does anybody have any changes? Okay. Well, then we can submit those as approved then. Thank you. And we do not have any old business that needs to be brought before us today, but we do have one case that we need to hear. And so we're going to go ahead and proceed with that. It is case REZN-08-17-1685. And this is a request to amend the zoning atlas of the Columbus Consolidated Government. Juanita Lewis of Columbus, Georgia, has submitted an application for 4261 St. Mary's Road, parcel 089-002-001. The current zoning is RO, which is residential office with conditions, and the proposed zoning is RO, residential office without conditions. The property is located in Council District 1, Barnes. Mr. Harrod, if you'll read the staff report for us.
Thank you. Just a quick correction. The case number is 09171685.
Oh, I'm reading the agenda.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm glad you corrected that. Thank you.
The applicant is Juanita Lewis. The owner is Juanita Lewis. Location is 4261 St. Mary's Road. Acreage is 1.12 acres. Current zoning classification is residential office with conditions. Proposed zoning classification is residential office without conditions. Current use of the property is a daycare center. Proposed use of the property is personal care home. General land use is consistent. It's in planning area E. Current land use designation is residential office. Future land use designation is single family residential. It is compatible with all existing land use. There are no environmental impacts. All city services are provided. The traffic impact should stay the same or decrease. Traffic engineering had no concerns. There were no comments from school. Buffer, it shall require a Category C buffer along all property lines bounded by the SFR2 zoning district. And those are the 3 options for Category C, which are 20, 10, and 30 feet. It's not a DRI. And we had 13 people that were notified within 300 feet, and we received no calls or emails regarding it. Are there any questions?
Yes, I've got 2 or 3 questions, and they have to do with your statement that the traffic impact should stay the same or decrease. And my concern is with the traffic in the area and the fact that the property appears to be zoned already in a way that's different from the rest of the area. When you say the traffic impact would stay the same or decrease, is that if the applicant changes it from a daycare center to a personal care home, or is it for any possible use if the applicant's petition is granted?
If the applicant changes it from daycare home to personal care home, it should stay the same. Right now, they currently have drop-offs in the morning, pickups in the afternoon. A personal care home, because of its nature, you have a lot of people who are living there but don't have a way to get off of the property. They have people that come by, family that come by and see them usually at the end of the week on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's you would have roughly the same amount of AADT.
Sure, that seems fine to me, but my concern is if we remove any restriction on the property and just make it any RO, if the personal care home doesn't work out or if the applicant sells the property, could we be looking at a situation in the future where the owner would put in a use that would greatly aggravate the traffic situation that would still be consistent with RO?
I don't think it would aggravate the situation. The road improvements that have been made along St. Mary's Road have changed the aspect of the road from when this was rezoned originally. There are not as many traffic concerns out there now as what there were before.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Herron? Yes.
Why are the conditions being removed?
Because the conditions do not allow for residential on a RO property. So you cannot have somebody living there, so therefore she could not do a personal care home.
I mean, I'm still confused. The conditions, as I understand them, are relative to internally deflected lighting, external trash dumpsters being screened and stuff like that.
As I believe Mr. Johnson relayed to you guys inside the email that we sent out, all those things are now currently taken care of inside the Unified Development Code. So those things are automatically looked at whenever you submit an application or you submit a site development plan.
Any other questions or Mr. Kenner?
When I went by there and looked the other day, there was something, Lewis Fast Tax. Is there a business, is there a tax business on the property?
I believe your applicant could answer that for you, and that's where the question needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns for Mr. Herrick? All right. If the applicant will please come forward, and if you will state your name and address over there, yes, ma'am, and give us a brief overview.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Juanita Lewis, and I live at 129 Whippoorwill Lane, Columbus, Georgia, 31906. And the purpose of me being here today is to, currently it's a daycare, but I want to replace the daycare with a personal home for boys with the Department of Family and Children's Services. Previously, it had been rezoned in 2003. But it has conditions that no one's to live on the property. And so that was the reason for coming before you this morning.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Did you want to ask about them?
Yeah.
Mr. Kenner?
It was AO at the time, but you rezoned it to, what is it, RO, without my knowledge, whatever. But anyway, that's why I'm here this morning.
Did she address that or not? No. Yeah, could you comment on, I think there's a Lewis tax sign, fast tax sign
That's
there?
correct. It's an annex there, the building right next to it.
Okay, is
And I
that,
have the license to operate it.
okay.
Commissioners, any?
Is that, I guess,
No.
I'm just asking the question, is that consistent with what we're talking about this morning, to have a tax service there?
She can have a office on RO. So if she wants to
Okay.
do
All right.
tax service as well as personal care home, then
Okay, all right.
Mr. Reese?
Yes, just a few questions for clarity. So under the normal situation of a RO, the residential aspect wouldn't be a problem, correct?
that is correct.
But in 2003, a condition was placed on the RO as it was put in
AO.
place there.
AO.
At the time in 2003, we did not have the zoning classification of RO. It was AO, which is apartment office. In 2005, we adopted the new Unified Development Code. At that time, whenever we did that across the entire county, AO was changed to RO because it most fit the same definition. Those conditions were placed on the rezoning by council at the time that it was rezoned in 2003 AO. So if the conditions were not there, it would normally function like a normal RO property.
So in summation, what we're really requesting to do today is to give this RO the same rights and privileges as any other RO within the city.
You're just asking to remove, they're just asking to remove conditions that are placed on that property that limit it, that take away from some of the normal abilities in our zoning district.
And there are no hesitations or concerns right now on behalf of the professional city staff that reviews these applications?
We don't have any concerns.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question.
Yes, Mr. Greenblatt.
Just a point of clarification to Mr. Reese's question. When AO moved to RO 2005, were these conditions put on all of those properties?
The conditions run with the property, that property.
I couldn't understand.
The conditions run with that property, not all the properties.
Just that property itself was the only one that had these conditions?
That's what happens whenever you're rezoned. If they place a condition on that property, it's for that property and that property alone. It runs with the property.
But no, my question is that
why?
when all of the AOs turned to RO in 2005, were these conditions put on all of the RO properties that changed from AO?
It wouldn't have been placed on all the properties. It only transfers over to a property that currently had conditions on that single property. Then the conditions stayed on there.
So these
The-
conditions were there when it was
The
AO?
designation of the zoning district changed.
So the conditions were on it when it was an AO?
Yes.
And which is consequently why they are still with it today as it's become an
Yes.
RO? Okay, that's, Mr. Brannon.
And I think, as I understand it, the single condition that's of concern is number 6, if you look at the old ordinance, which limits her ability to operate the facility in a certain way. All of these other things, except for the other one that talks about it should go to a different class if it doesn't do anything like that. 6 and 7 limit her ability to operate the business as she sees fit for an RO. Everything else is covered under the UDO, and all of those points are moot now because they're covered under the UDO. So as I understand it, she's most concerned with 6 and 7, which would allow her to have the personal care home on site.
One last question.
Sure.
To your knowledge, sir, the reason that the condition were placed on this property back in 2003, do those conditions still exist or have they been rectified?
To my knowledge, they were rectified at the time, except for the one talking about the improvements to St. Mary's Road, and that project was never came to fruition.
But as far as, and that will relate more to traffic.
Correct.
And as far as traffic, we're not looking at an increase, per your professional opinion, we're not looking at an increase in traffic
Not
due
with-
to the nature of the business.
Not with the proposed use that she's requesting.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Dudley?
But to follow up on the last point, is it also the case that with any use she could make of the property, if it were RO with no conditions, there also would be no traffic concern? Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think she could make an impact enough to create traffic concerns on that road.
With any RO use, not
With any
just
RO
with the
use.
personal care home? Okay.
She would have, somebody would have to really build it out to.
Big
Yeah,
complex.
to make traffic concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Harrod or for the applicant? Thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this proposition? And I see no one. Is anyone who would like to speak in favor of it? And we have no one. Commissioners, do I hear a motion? Mr. Reese.
As it relates to REZN 09171876, applicant Juanita Lewis, owner Juanita Lewis, location 4261 St. Mary's Road, 1.2 acreage, currently zoning RO residential conditions, proposed zone RO without conditions, current property use daycare center, proposed property use personal care home, future land designation, single family. Is a request compatible with existing land usage? Yes, and very minimum traffic impact to no traffic impact at all per the experts on staff. With all current buffer zone classifications satisfied, I move that we approve the application as submitted.
All right, so we have a first and second. Mr. Greenblatt, before
Point of
we-
order, please clarify the case number for us, Mr. Harrod.
It is 09171685.
Okay.
All right, so the staff report,
The staff report is correct.
so that's a different number then.
0917.
We have 07,
Sorry,
and then I've got 08.
Well, we know the agenda is wrong. We said that earlier,
Yeah.
but what about the online staff report?
I'm sorry, yes, it's, I'm sorry, guys. It's 09171876.
So my motion was correct.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve, and we have a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And it is unanimous, so we will send that with a recommendation for approval back to planning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
consideration. Thank you.
All right, that's the only case that we have to have before us today, although Director Jones is going to be coming forward to give us some information regarding the comprehensive plan of 2038.
Good morning to you. I do appreciate the opportunity of being here with you this morning to share some information that we have ongoing. The last several weeks in the planning department have been somewhat busy, as you might imagine, with everything we've got going on right now, in dealing with some projects and dealing with some transportation issues. I know many of you know that just last week we helped host the Georgia Planning Association here in Columbus. And I hope you had the opportunity to enjoy that while they were here for the educational opportunities that it afforded us. We normally don't budget that kind of thing in our department, but we just saw it as a real need to offer you that opportunity to be there at the conference. And again, we hope you enjoyed it. We had probably close to 300 people actually attending across the state, which means a good deal to us in terms of hosting other planners and hearing what they had to say and some ideas they shared with us, which was really beneficial. The thing I want to come and share with you this morning is dealing with this thing called the Columbus Comprehensive Plan. And Commissioner Kenner, good to see you again this morning. Thank you for being there last night. We do appreciate your attendance and hope you found it to be informative from that standpoint. We're in that mix, though, of trying to get something done with the comprehensive plan. Let me show you what the importance really is here this morning, but while we're trying to achieve this. A lot of folks don't realize, and again, Commissioner Kenner, you probably saw most of this, so bear with me, please, if you will, on this. A lot of folks don't realize, though, that Columbus was actually a planned community when we started out back in the early 1800s and so forth. In fact, we were actually the last planned city in the original 13 colonies, and that I guess that speaks volumes to some folks that understand that we do have a history here in this community of planning and what it really means to us. Now, this is my analogy, so just kind of bear with me here a little bit on this, because I'm sharing this with everybody I talk to about this. But I have some friends that, when we used to live in Texas, they were in the military, they were in the Air Force. They were both captains, so they didn't have any children. And so they when they got leave or whatever, they just take off. And for them, the adventure was they would get in the car and they take their vacation. They go as far as they could that first week. They go as far as they could. They didn't have any type of itinerary, didn't know where they were going to stay, didn't know where they were going to eat, didn't know what they were going to do. But nonetheless, they got in the car, and that was their adventure to them. And they did the same thing on the way back. They vacationed back. When it got to that Saturday or Sunday, and they had you back the following week, they would get in the car, but maybe come back a different direction. But they would still come and go from that standpoint. And again, I emphasize the word here to you, that was their adventure. That was what they were trying to achieve. My analogy is to the council, when I made this presentation to them and to others, is this is pretty much how government works sometimes, in the sense that we just basically take our budget, we put it in front of ourselves and put it in front of our departments and whatever else may be, and our citizens, and we say, look, we're going to go as far as we can this way with something. Maybe we go from like July to January. Then we get to January, we're going to start looking, coming back and figuring out how we're going to get back to the end of that budget cycle. And then we're going to start this whole process over again. We can't keep doing that. We just can't afford to keep doing that, not only in Columbus, but in other local governments throughout this country. You just can't keep doing it. You got to have some idea of what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to go, and what you're going to do once you get there. So this is the question really about why do we plan here from that standpoint. And again, and as I said last night to some folks, and I've said to others, this is the cheesy part of the presentation, so just kind of bear with me for just a second here. But because it does give us that ability, it gives us that accountability we're all looking for. And when we say we're going to do something, we can be held accountable in terms of we're going to try to achieve that goal, that directive, that objective more than anything else. It gives us compatibility in the sense that we know what's going on with other agencies, with other departments. We know what we can pretty much tell our citizens and assure our citizens that things are going to work together here to make things happen. It gives us profitability. We're not in the business, especially in local government, here to make a profit. But we ought to be able to show some kind of return back to our citizens when it's all said and done, that this is what we got back for the money we spent of yours as taxes or fees, whatever you want to call them, that came back to the community itself. Sustainability provides us, gives us that assurance that this government, this community is going to be able to take care of things as it goes along. That we know at least have an idea about some things coming along. When you have a natural disaster or things of that type, there's no way you can possibly know about that, but nevertheless, it gives us that idea of accessibility as well, in terms of making sure that as citizens we can get from one point to another in this community, where we need to go. What we have, where they also have accessible to services that we also depend upon as well from that. It gives us livability, of course. That's what we're trying to achieve here, I think, is make sure we have a community that is livable, that is doable, that is workable, that makes things happen in this community that we all feel comfortable about. Provides us responsibility too. Once we establish what we're trying to achieve here as a community, and once we have planned it out, we ought to be responsible for that action as well. Every time I think about that word in particular, I think about the folks who call us and say, I have this vacant lot behind me. It's been that way for the last 10 years. Now somebody's developing on that. Why? And we have, our responsibility in that sense is being able to assure them what's going on, but at the same time, give them an understanding about what we're all trying to achieve here with the plan itself. Predictability, that goes more along the lines of the story I just shared with you too as well. And so folks should understand or have an understanding at least about what to expect in this community, how things are going to happen, how things are going to grow, what changes they may see in the future, what changes we all want to see in the future. And that's why we look at the predictability aspect of it. Finally, reliability. As elected officials, as staff, planning commissioners, whatever the case may be here, there will be some reliability in what we all are trying to achieve here from that standpoint. That whatever we say to folks, whatever we're dealing with ideas or plans or objectives, whatever, there will be some reliability in it, something that you really somewhat can take to the bank here, so that you have an understanding about what we're trying to achieve here, and that you know that those things are actually going to come to some type of fruition in the future here. So what do we have now? We do actually have a comprehensive plan. I don't want to mislead anybody. We did this back in 2003, and the state really mandates that. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in just a second about that. But it was really done in 2003. As I said, the state mandates that every local community in this state have a comprehensive plan or a master plan for it to work with. You have to update pretty much every 5 years. They really require 10. We do it every 5 on ourselves here to make that happen, to go from that. Our plan today either meets or exceeds what the state law requires. So we're not shortchanging anybody on that. We have gone through this process before, and we want to go through it again, of course. The plan's got to address these items here. These are 6 basic items that we're showing you here this morning that the plan's got to talk about. things like land use and transportation and housing. Those are all key components in any local community. And it's our objective to make that happen. And then there's another element that we don't hear a lot about, or a lot of folks don't know about, and that's this thing called a short-term work program. The plan itself is nice in the sense you establish what you hear from in terms of goals and objectives from the community and what they want to see happen. But then you got to find a way of actually implementing these ideas and so forth. The short-term work program is really designed to help and accomplish that fact. Let me give this an example of what the short-term work program looks like. It's one of the pages in here. It's kind of maybe a little bit hard to see on the screen here this morning, but I'll try to point out to you. Across the top here are actually the actual years themselves in terms of the 5-year increments, in terms of what's going to be accomplished. Over here, on this side here, are the actual items that are proposed to be developed over the next 5-year time frame from that. Then in this column here is actually the agency or department that's going to be responsible for handling that. Then there's also involved here a cost in that, and then that last column talks about funding. Who's going to fund it? Where's that money going to come from? How are you going to go forward with this whole deal? This is a nice exercise. That's the best way I know how to put it, because that's pretty much what it's boiled back down to. Is we go through this, we have to tell the state how we're going to implement these things we've established in the plan, and we assign basically those departments or those agencies that responsibility. But as I shared with our technical steering committee on Monday, a lot of those folks have never seen this plan. They don't understand what it's for. It really is a capital improvement program tool, for the most part, a CIP tool that we need to try to implement and try to figure out how we're going to make that work. This is something I don't think that a lot of our council members also understood it as well in terms of how this was to work. If it's done right, the comprehensive plan should lead and guide any type of budgetary activity we got going on in this community. And that's my ultimate objective, is to make sure that happens as we go through this process. This is the other thing I want to kind of point out to you now. All these little icons coming up on the screen now are different agencies or organizations or whatever that have a plan of some sort. This is all good. I'm not saying it's not. The problem is none of these plans are correlated back to the comprehensive plan itself. So in essence, my terminology, again, more than anything else, is we really have to have the tail wagging the dog here in a lot of cases because of the things that are going on. These are all great things. These are all community-oriented and things we want to see happen, but they're not reflective either in that comp plan or reflective of the comprehensive plan, what we're trying to achieve. That's important to us and how we want to deal with that. And it's just a matter of getting our arms around all this activity and getting everybody to understand that there should be that one document that deals with this. Not to say you can't have your own plans out there, but they need to make sure that they are working with that comprehensive plan as it goes forward. So what's wrong with what we got now? You see it pretty much every time you meet. In fact, I know you do. And you should be looking at it if you're not in terms of the comprehensive plan itself. But we're only using it really for zoning decisions. We look at that land use plan, that future land use plan, and we marry it up against an application, and we say, does it meet that or not, and why not, and all that good stuff that goes with it. And council does the same thing. And to be honest, the planning department is responsible for that activity, for that method we're using now. We got to get beyond that. It's just more than just dealing with zoning matters that come before you here. There really isn't any real buy-in at times, not from, at least especially from outside agencies, outside departments. Again, like I said, it's only really used in terms of dealing with zoning issues. Again, there's no direct correlation to the CIP process. This will all be a budgetary tool, and that's the objective here, is to make sure that happens. The short-term, as I've pointed out to you, the short-term work program has no real relevance. And like I said, a lot of folks just don't understand that it's even out there. There's no coordination with the plan. again, with other city agencies and nonprofit organizations. And as I keep telling everybody, this is the worst thing you can do to a planner, is let him or her go through this process, develop this document, spend hours and hours and weeks of time on this, only to find it wind up on a shelf somewhere, and everybody say, that's nice, we've met all our obligations, we'll see you in 5 years. That's not what we're trying to deal here from that. This is our timeline on the comprehensive plan. I will go a little more detail, particularly in just a second, about this area here in terms of August of 2018. Really, by this time next year, we have to have this document approved by the Department of Community Affairs and going through the state and so forth. Right now, we're looking at everything you see on this community participation program and dealing with identifying the stakeholders. We've had both technical, we've asked council to come up with some citizen stakeholders for us as well. We're doing this thing called community assessment and surveys in here from that standpoint to make it work. We were hopeful to come in on August and brief you about this, but unfortunately everything else, from hurricanes and whatever else we had going on, this is the best time we've had to come and actually talk to you about some things. We've already had our first required public meeting. That was at the end of August in front of council. We advertised that meeting like we do any other public meeting, encourage folks to come. But we did at that time just brief council, like I'm briefing you this morning, about what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve, and where we want to go here from that. We are in a series, and I'm going to go a little more detail on that too, with some public meetings, with dealing with the public. We've had our first one last night at Winbrook Baptist Church, and we were scheduled to have at least 5 more over the next 3 weeks. So we're in that process now. Once we get through the public meetings, we'll take a step back. We'll gather all the information, all the comments we've heard, and we'll start putting the plan together. And then sometime after the first of the year, I would say mid to late January, early February, we'll go back out to the public again and say, this is what we heard in October. All right, did we get it right? Or is there something we need to change, add, subtract, whatever the case may be? Then sometime in April, we'll pull a plan together in the meantime between February and, say, May, whatever, and start going through that process of having additional conversations about it. We are shooting to have this plan in place and adopted, at least approved by DCA, somewhere toward the August of next year. Give ourselves a little lead time here in case something does happen that we have to push it back. We just don't want to get up to October and try to get this thing done in short work time. We just don't have it. So we'll go from that. Here's where we are today exactly on this and that. Like I said, we had our first official public meeting in August in front of council for that. We're working now on developing 2 stakeholder committees. The technical committee, which is made up mostly of department heads and local agencies, we met with them Monday to get them started, to get them indoctrinated really to what we're trying to achieve, and where we need to go with them and try to get their help and support. Council, we've asked council to appoint the citizen stakeholders. We're asking each council member to appoint at least one. The mayor's going to appoint the other ones as well from that. We're now looking at somewhere in the last week of October this month to hold our first meeting with those stakeholders group once we get council's nominees in place on that. As I said, there's a technical committee here. It's made up of city department heads, other local agencies. We've met with them on that. And then like I said, also we've already started our public meetings and going out and reaching out to the public from that. This gives you an idea of the remaining meetings we've got going on. On the October 5th, we will be at Midland Middle School. On the 10th, we're at Baker Middle School for that. October 12th, we're at the City Service Center, which is in this building here on the ground floor. October 17th we're at Fort Middle School, and then we're at Fox Elementary on October 19th. And these meetings start at 6 o'clock, and we're trying to wrap them up by 8, so it's about a 2-hour window. And just so everybody knows what to expect at these meetings, we give a brief overview, much like we're doing right now, to those attendees, let them know what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. We also run a survey in-house at that point. We'll give you a keypad, ask you to answer some questions just so we get a feel for what's going on. But the most important part of the meeting is we'll ask you to sit at a table. Well, there's a map of the area itself we're in, and we'll run a SWOT analysis with you. We'll ask you to give us your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats for what you see in this area. And that's the most important part of the meeting, because that's where we need to hear from our citizens about what's going on out there and what they'd like to see and what's going on. I should emphasize also, these are not gripe sessions. Yeah, I understand we got concerns, but we're here to look at the future and what we can achieve together to make this place a better place to live from that. Where we go from here, we got it, like I said, we got to have it completed by 2018, August 2018. DCA's got to have it approved. We've got to have it to them by October so they can approve it, or at least get it approved by October 2018. We are, like I said, we're holding public hearings, but we're also conducting surveys. There is a survey on our website we're encouraging everyone to take. It takes you probably 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes to go through it and answer some questions. That's just good information to have from us. We are looking, we have set dedicated Facebook pages for this. There's a dedicated website to the comprehensive plan, which we'll be adding things as we go along in terms of documents or receiving comments or whatever the case may be. We realize that some folks just can't get out. And we're trying to make it as accessible as we possibly can. You know, you still can send us emails. You can still be old school and write us a letter. Maybe you want to call us. I don't know. But we're trying to make sure that we're reaching out and allowing folks every opportunity to do this. Commissioner Brandon, thank you for you and your radio station, for Al Hayes for his willingness to let me come and sit and talk with him for a few moments so we can get that out on the radio. I do appreciate that. We're looking again at every avenue we can to make this happen. There's things like Instagram, of course, and Twitter. We've even done our own version of Family Feud. We call it Columbus Plans Feud, and it's actually on the Access channel. It's on our website as well, as you can go. It's a little bit of a parody that allows us to basically try to explain a little bit easier, I hope, in terms of what the comp plan really is and what is achievable and what its real purpose is more than anything else. Of course, we got to seek ways into how we make this thing part of the CIP process when it's all said and done. And then we got to establish this idea that there is a real master plan in this community, and that we can follow it and make sure it happens from that standpoint. If you had to sum all this up, which I am right now, but if you had to sum up what we're trying to do, the little catchphrase we got now is that our future really matters. You know, it's a little bit disconcerting to me, I guess, as a planner, that I can't entice folks or encourage folks or get folks excited about talking about the future of this community. Most folks will come to us and tell us what's wrong with the community, or tell us what needs to be done when something comes up. When an issue is before them, whether it be a road widening or rezoning. Oh yeah, they're good about telling us that. But this is more preventive medicine, if you want to look at it that way, in the sense that if we can establish how we want to grow and how we want to see things happen in this community, we can get out ahead of this stuff now. Especially when we all know that budgets are tight, and Columbus is certainly the poster child for that. Budgets are tight. And so if you're looking for new ball fields, new recreational areas, the time isn't to be asking for that when all of a sudden we get a windfall somewhere or another grant in here and we all start fighting for it. We all be saying to ourselves now as a community, this is where this needs to go now, and we need to be getting in line for it, or at least put our name in the hat. Quick example of that is a little bit beyond what we're talking about, not much. We're still talking about this idea of this high-speed rail for Columbus. I think it's a vital component we got to keep talking about. But the Federal Railroad Administration about a year or so ago sent out a proposal saying they want to see projects for high-speed rail. But they also put the caveat in there that there's no money. We don't have any funding set up. We just need to know what these projects are. And the question came back to us about, well, why do we want to do that? And my answer was, we want to make sure we get our name in the hat. We want to make sure that the federal government knows that we're interested in doing this project and trying to achieve it. And that we did that. We made sure that we put our name out in front. And the same thing is, I think, is applicable here. That if you've got a project in mind, whether it be a road project or a land use need or recreation or whatever the case may be, we need to have that kind of idea out in front of us now so that we're not having to play catch up 5, 10 years down the road. That's certainly what we do with transportation projects now. We put them out there. We know the funding's not available necessarily. We know when the funding's available, we're in line to get that going. We want to strongly encourage folks to come out. This is their opportunity to tell us what they want to see in this community and how we can make it a better place. And again, we just can't emphasize enough how important this process is. It's just not another mental exercise. And we really want to say to you that we think our future matters. And we think, I hope our citizens realize that as well.
Can I make a comment about you trying, because I know it's got to be frustrating when you realize how important this is and you hold a public forum and 5 people show up. One of the largest groups we have in our community is the Young Professional Group through the Chamber. It's one of the largest in the Southeast. And I look at that date and I see 2038 and I wonder how many people my age in their 50s are going to get motivated by that, which is sad because you really should, because it's planning your community for your kids, your grandkids, or whatever. But, Mr. Jones, I'm wondering, have you guys ever thought about literally taking that to a group? Like find out when the YPs are getting together. I don't even know if you're a YPer, aren't you? You know, I don't know that they have meetings, but my first thought was, oh my gosh, maybe we should just take this to them and present it, because that is a captivated, motivated, energetic group of young folks, and you can't be in that group if you're over 40.
Yeah,
So, you know.
We are reaching out to them.
Good.
And again, we've reached out to the Chamber. We reached out to the Community Foundation because, you know, they got this on the table stuff coming up in November.
Chat.
So we're trying to make sure we're coordinated with that. We're reaching out to the newspaper now to get them more involved with their Together 2025 initiative and so forth. We know those kind of things are going on, and if anybody's, you know, those that are at home watching this, or you may know somebody, we'll certainly be willing to come to any group and talk about this because it is important. So we want to share this information with you.
Thank you. Mr. Bollinger?
I noticed on one of your slides on the deck, you had a host of groups that are already doing their own planning, such as Midtown, Uptown, the Waterworks, the school district. Do you have a plan to incorporate them into these stakeholder and technical committees so that you can combine all that input and maybe get some synergy in that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
In fact, I've had council members ask me for suggestions, and I certainly have given them those. We're trying to incorporate those nonprofit agencies you may have seen on the screen. For instance, we had the Columbus Waterworks at our technical committee the other day. So we know they got to be a key part. The thing, you know, the thing that I keep preaching about this is this is a very voluminous plan when it all gets done. It's got you know, not only the existing land use but future, and it's got demographics and all that good stuff. But the thing about it is, you know, we could sit back in the annex over there and do this plan ourselves. I mean, the planning department can, you know, we're quite capable of writing plans. I can assure you that. And we can do this plan. We could go through that motion. We could have a public meeting like we had in August, you know, so we had a public meeting, write that plan and come back to council in January or February and say, here's the plan. Do you like it? And yeah, let's go forward with it and be done with it. We don't want to do that. It's got to be really the plan of this community. Doesn't need to be my plan, because it's really got to be something that means that. So we got to make sure we involve anybody and everybody with that, especially the ones that we showed on the screen today about they got their plans and so forth. It's not that we're trying to say their plans don't have any value. That's not the case. They do have value, but we want to make sure we incorporate that value back into this document we're putting together itself. So that's important to us. But I think it's a great question. I do
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, and I think what you're doing is critical to the future of the city, and I hope that those other committees have the same enthusiasm about participating and being part of that. I think that's going to be critical, because they have a lot of people that are involved in their local, community, whether it's uptown or midtown or a school district or whatever. So if we can draw all that in and get the same amount of enthusiasm, energy pulled into what you're doing, I think would be critical to going forward. But I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Please, we encourage you, if you have the time, of course, to come and attend one of the meetings. We got 5 more to deal with here over the next 3 weeks. Also invite your friends and neighbors, let them know about it, let them know the importance of this. We do keep it to 2 hours, but we think I'll be honest real quick, we went last night really for more quality than we had quantity in terms of folks attending. We had with the number we had, there was a good number in terms of folks giving us our ideas. We got a lot of great comments from the ones that did attend. So we're going to be able to incorporate that. We still would like to hear more ideas and more thoughts. One thing I didn't say real quick, we have divided the city up into 6 different planning districts. We were in Planning District A last night. When we go to Midland, we'll have the map just for the Midland area in terms of looking at things and so forth. We'll still be willing to talk about, of course, things community-wide, but we're trying to make sure we put an emphasis on where folks actually live and how things can be developed. So we want to encourage you to invite others to attend. Again, I can't stress the importance to us and to us as a community in trying to do this.
Just real quick, if you don't mind, Madam Chairwoman, I just want to thank you guys again for the work that you're doing. As other board members have said, as someone who transitioned first through corporate America before going into the legal world, I know the extensiveness that we would go to with strategic planning each year, making sure that each department, each area was fully covered. And a lot of those long-term plans, 5 and 10 years down the road, it's critical that you have a roadmap of where you're trying to go. But I do want to just place emphasis on what Madam Chairwoman said in regards to making sure that the younger generation are part of this plan. If we're talking 2038, we're talking about 20-plus years down the road from today. And I think it's going to be critical that the individuals that will most likely be in seat of leadership and engagement at that time be a part of that. And at the same time, I don't want you to reinvent the wheels of what you're doing in your plan, because you showed us a plan that's well on its way and with designated months that you want to do certain things, and I think that's great. In addition to inviting the young professionals, the mayor recently had a Let's Talk with the Mayor, and she focused on the young leadership groups in the city, the young art patrons, young professionals, the Urban League of Greater Columbus, in which, God rest his soul, Mr. Bill Turner had a big part in making sure that the Urban League was successful here in Columbus. Those are vital groups that I think will catch every aspect of the community. Invite them to one of these meetings, like October the 19th. I wouldn't try to plan a new meeting. I would take one that you have in place and say, hey, we want this to be your emphasis meeting, along with the community. Because I do feel, as I sat here, and I wasn't going to make a comment, but I think what she said was so critical, because too often I can tell you the younger generation feels like their voices are not being reached and not being heard because no one's reaching out to them. And the mayor got a lot of kudos. Frankly, people, regardless of how you care about her, she got a lot of kudos for reaching out to the younger generation, saying, hey, let's talk. And there were some people who challenged her there. But that's what democracy is. It's messy. It's not always fun. And as we talk about Columbus and where we're headed, we want to make sure that the voices of all people are heard and that we make this the best place ever. I think ultimately we all want the same thing, and that's a peaceful, economically driven community that's well planned and suits everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Thank you.
I appreciate